forward to working with you in the future. But so far in Orange County, I don't know if I've lived up to the hype of replacing Mike Cheatham. Mike is here with us today. One of the biggest resource concerns that I see the last 3 years I've been here is water quality issues with the karst topography, with the sinkholes we have here. This is a very unique county. It's a unique geographical area, and anything we can do to keep the water clean in a woodland situation, in a crop field situation, in a confined feeding area, grazing situation is a good thing. When a timber harvest is done, the first thing that a landowner says is, wow, it looks like a war zone. Nate, I'm sure you've heard that before. What happened to my woods? There's paths all over the place, and there's some ruts here and there. The biggest thing we want to do with NRCS is we want to address some of those resource concerns that could cause a water quality issue. And in a situation where the landing is upstream of a nice waterfall, intermittent stream, sinkhole, superficial opening, we want to address that landing area. Basically, landing areas where the logs are stored after they're drug out from the harvest, the drop area, and then they're loaded up and onto semis, what have you, and hauled away. And that whole area is basically, it looks like a field that had been worked with a disc, what have you. There's a lot of compaction there. As far as water quality issue that arises from something of that nature, we have, say the harvest is done in October, September, say it's done in March, April, any time of the year, with spring rains coming on in the spring, with the freezing and unthawing coming on in the winter time, we want to stabilize that area. We want to stabilize the skidder trails. And that is done with management practices such as a grass planting in the landing area. It can be cool season, could be warm season, but what the grass is doing is setting a root system down and holding the soil to where it doesn't end up going down the intermittent stream and in a chocolate brown situation and moving on or going subsurface into our karst topography and getting into our wells and into our springs, that we may utilize as drinking water. Also, I'm sure we've all seen it driving down roads here in Orange County, Washington County, Lawrence County, Martin County, what have you. After a timber harvest is done, that skidder trail, if there's any grade to that skidder trail whatsoever, there's going to be some erosion that's going to occur. And every year, it's going to get worse, to where at one time it was flat, and year, 2, 3 years down the road, it becomes a V-bottom with the erosion, the water and the runoff picking up velocity, and every foot, every 10 feet it goes, it picks up more velocity and it cuts more. It causes reels and basically sediment coming with it. So it's transporting sediment and nutrients. If we go in and we put in water bars, which, I think some folks don't understand exactly what a water bar is, but it's those speed bumps and a skidder trail that you see after a harvest is done. Some folks think, well, how am I going to get my tractor and my firewood trailer up that? There can be new paths that are made for that application. But that skidder trail really needs to be, as far as ATVs, dirt bikes, tractors, things of that nature, golf carts, that needs to be off limits until it gets reestablished with your grass or clover or whatever you want to plant in there. Hopefully it's going to be something that's shade tolerant. Obviously there's certain species of broadleafs, clovers, legumes, grasses that don't really like the shade. Creeping red fescue is something that I normally see used in that application. Works great. Straw it down, with some mulch. Some folks ask about erosion control fabric. That's pretty expensive. I think you can get a lot accomplished with putting in a water bar every 30, 40, 50 feet, depending on the grade, and making sure that that's placed correctly to where it will convey the stormwater and down into a ditch type area and not further erode the skidder trail. Any questions?
That right there, what's the story on that? We're having ditches that we can't stop the water, they're just taking everything with it.
In a forest land situation,
Just like that.
you're always going to have intermittent streams and washouts in a woodland.
Well, it looks like they're holding that somewhere. I mean, is that a solid concrete across there?
That's just basically a rock outcropping. Yeah, that's been there when this was a pasture, more than likely. It's perfect for where it is. Like in a cropland situation, we would put, depending on the watershed and the drainage area, in a situation like that, we'd put a grade stabilization structure. That could either be riprap, or that could be an aluminum toe wall structure or a concrete toe wall structure that kind of looks like that, to be honest with you. So Mother Nature has done a great job in leaving that there for us to control the velocity and cut down on further erosion.
Well, we've got one that we put monster rocks in, monster rocks. Everything. Just took them away.
With the spring like we've had, a lot of that has occurred.
It's gone.
We've seen erosion in pasture land, in woodland, like we have never seen. We just got to get that much better, at addressing those issues. There's been a lot of maintenance done on pond spillways, on skidder trails, on even in crop fields. But that's something my agency can help you with. We have a whole slew of practices we can put on your land to control. Give me a call and I'll get you get you penciled in.
I don't know what magazine it was. I've seen this about water bars using heavy belting. Anybody, you know what I'm talking about?
Belting as in
Conveyor belt or something. I forget where I seen that.
like coal mine conveyor belts?
And they bury part of it and leave part of it across. It looked like a good idea to me.
It can get expensive to put in though.
It is?
Yeah, I mean, you have to dig it all out and set it in there and cover it back up, and it takes a lot of work.
So it's like a silk fence, only using a conveyor belt.
Well, you can drive right
Well, you
over
can drive over it.
and I thought it looked like a real good idea, but I don't know where to get any belting. I had a lot of trouble with my roads this spring. I mean, a lot of trouble. And I just thought that might be an alternative. I didn't know if anybody was using them.
If you live around the coal mines or stone quarries, oftentimes you can get that belting for nothing or very little. But it does, like you said, Mike, it works great because you can run over it numerous times without destroying your erosion capability.
Looked like they were just putting it in a slight angle and leave them sticking up 6 inches or so. And I thought it was a good idea. I didn't know where to get belting.
Coal mine country. And from what I understand, a lot of them are down right now.
That's a cost sharing practice, right?
Mike, come on.
It'll be innovative.
Some folks have tried tires before as well. Waste tires. I mean, it's one thing. If it's got its place, I mean, I don't know if that would be approved, but whatever. Rock gets expensive, and water bars. It takes a lot of maintenance. It's nice to have a front end loader and with a grader blade and a tractor to address those up.
A couple of things that I recommend to landowners is when you're having a timber sale and you're working with a forester, you can ask the forester to help the logger to lay out the main skid trails so that you end up with a good trail system afterwards for your own access that's not impassable, and it meets the logger's needs as well. But then instead of putting water bars in, putting in what we call a broad base dip, which is kind of a rolling dip that you can actually drive over with a high clearance pickup or ATVs. We've used those at Southern Indiana for the ice, and they work very well.
Would you put them in more often than you would a water bar? Would you have them 10 feet apart, or
Not necessarily. They're just as effective as a water bar at getting the water off. It's just that instead of this sudden hump, it's more gradual.
Just a swale.
Well, a water bar will too, over time.
Sometimes a water bar becomes a swale. You know, if you don't stabilize that skidder trail, you know, with some type of a rock or grass.
Another thing you can do too that I've been instituting a little bit, a lot of times I do this post-harvest PSI after the logs come out, is take a little 4-inch maple or beech right next to the trail, drop it, the name right across the trail. And actually that serves, I mean you don't want to do that every 10 feet, you obviously couldn't. But it does help in some cases, especially after the fact where the water bar may have been put a little far apart. You see some of that rocking. That's a good spot. You know, to drop it real too across. Make sure it's doesn't do no good to drop it across. The water's going to run underneath it. Cut you a 6-foot section or whatever the case may be to get that off the ground at an angle where the water can come off. That'll actually eventually kind of fill up with weeds, a little bit of debris, and get a lot of load to pop up. It's not as expensive as water.
I've seen that where the tops have been dropped on the skidder trail. At
And
first,
I've asked loggers to do that too. Most of the time it's for trespassing issues. Just to keep
discourages ATVs.
discourages ATVs, stuff like that. But it also does serve as a fantastic water ball.
And that goes, it brings me up to a good point is when your timber cutter is dropping tops, be careful that they don't drop the tops down in the tributary or creeks, streams, or what have you. That can lead to some further issues on down the road with maybe water kind of changing its course and, you know, causing further log jams in a bigger stream corridor type situation. But we want to keep the tops on the hillsides instead of in the actual streams and creeks. That's another big thing. And that's something a consultant will help you out with. You know, it's always whether you use a consultant marker or a consultant forester or what have you. You know, that's one thing that they kind of drive the point home, and they come out during the actual harvest itself just to kind of be the watchdog and keep an eye on things. That way they know that the cutters don't always, I won't say anything, but sometimes the guys running the skidders and guys dropping the trees, sometimes the communication gap, there's a little bit of a communication gap there with the person that actually had the highest bid, and it's always good to have somebody there to kind of meet with them at the end of the day or once a week to say, hey, you know, I noticed back there in this area, you know, there could have been some things we could have done better. Maybe in that crossing down there that you guys had some low value trees in there, you are going to remove them, right? That's not something that you're going to keep in there to block that. Just to follow up with. You know, there's a lot of goods and a lot of good advantages of having a consultant, working with a consultant. Any other questions? Are we at intermission, Mike? Is this halfway?
The next one will be.
Next one.